Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're joining us today, you are that ever-curious learner that we really love to build this show for.
Absolutely. You're the kind of person who sees the world not just for what it is, but, for what it could be.
Yeah, exactly. And today we're going to need exactly that mindset. We are exploring an initiative called Project Genius for Sustainability. And Genius, in this case, is actually an acronym.
Right. It stands for Generating Environmental Innovation Using Scraps.
Which is, it's quite a title.
It really is. And it carries a very bold premise that, frankly, challenges standard environmentalism right out of the gate.
It does. So our mission today is to unpack how a completely unique framework is reframing literal garbage. The idea here is to stop treating waste as this problem to be hidden away in a landfill somewhere.
And start viewing it as raw intelligence.
Yes, raw intelligence.
Oh.
We're going to look at how this project turns sustainability from a guilt trip into a highly creative wealth-generating act.
What's fascinating here is how this initiative bridges two worlds that, they rarely speak the same language. On one hand, you have high-level corporate ESG compliance.
That's environmental, social, and governance reporting.
Exactly. The rigid metrics that massive companies use to prove they're sustainable. But then on the other hand, you have on-the-ground, low-tech community empowerment.
Yeah.
It's a system designed to rigorously protect its intellectual property, while simultaneously, and this is the crazy part, giving the actual physical solutions away to the people who need them most.
To understand how they pull that off, we are looking at a really eclectic stack of sources today. We've got official intellectual property filing strategies for MyIPO.
The Intellectual Property Corporation of Malaysia.
Right. But alongside those dry legal documents, we have hands-on facilitator guidebooks, actual corporate ESG pitch letters, and blueprints for a global open source registry.
It is extremely rare to see community activism mapped out with the legal precision of, like, a tech startup.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this, because the core philosophy requires a total mindset shift. First things first, this is not recycling.
Not at all.
The documentation makes a very sharp distinction here. Recycling is often just delaying the inevitable trip to the landfill, especially when you're dealing with complex materials.
Right.
What Project Genius is doing is what they call reinvention with purpose.
And that distinction is crucial. Standard recycling usually requires massive infrastructure, high heat, huge amounts of electricity.
Yeah, and it generally only works on clean, uniform materials.
Exactly. If you throw a multi-layer potato chip bag into a standard recycling bin, the system just gives up on it.
It gets incinerated or buried.
Right. But Project Genius specifically targets that complex, unrecyclable waste, the composites, the multi-layer packaging, the discarded industrial pallets.
And the goal is to use low-tech, low-energy methods to turn those discarded items into actual structural solutions for communities. And this entire philosophy, it's perfectly captured before you even read a single word of their manual.
Oh, the logo.
The logo. I have to describe this logo for you because it's striking. It's a light bulb, but it's split down the middle.
Right.
The left side is an intricate mechanical structure made of dark gears and metallic circuitry. But the right side is a vibrant green leafy vine forming the other half of the glass.
And inside it.
Inside the bulb, there's a glowing DNA helix that morphs into a plant stem with leaves with these little abstract scraps of circuitry floating around it.
If we analyze the imagery there, it's pushing past the standard green leaf sustainability tropes. It's communicating a real fusion of technology and biology.
Yeah.
But the DNA imagery is the piece that really anchors their methodology. It visually reflects the idea that materials never actually die.
They just change form.
Exactly. Their fundamental building blocks are just sitting there waiting to be regenerated into something new. It frames a pile of trash not as a hazard, but as a resource, experiencing a temporary failure of human imagination.
That's a great way to put it. Which brings us to how they actually execute this on the ground. Everything they do relies on a proprietary methodology called the 5 Ps framework.
Adapted by Ts, Dr. Norsaidatul Akmar Mazelan and Dr. Daniel Eng.
And let's clarify those titles quickly. In Malaysia, T stands for Professional Technologist, which indicates a highly rigorous technical background.
Right, and they adapted this framework from the GPM Global P5 standard.
GPM being Green Project Management.
Yes. Their P5 standard is essentially the gold standard for measuring a project's real-world sustainability impacts across society, the environment, and the economy.
And Dr. Mazelan brings the rigorous assessment background, while Dr. Eng focuses on the narrative and behavioral change.
Together, they've embedded these 5 Ps into everything the project does.
Let's break those down. First is people, which focuses entirely on human dignity and skill transfer.
Then planet, focusing on radical circularity and diverting complex waste.
And here is where it really deviates from typical environmental projects. The third P is prosperity.
This is huge. Every single project must have a micro-enterprise pathway. If you look at the history of grassroots sustainability, so many projects fail because they rely on endless volunteerism.
Or grant money.
Exactly. By mandating a prosperity metric, they ensure the solution creates local economic wealth.
Rounding out the framework, we have process or partnership, ensuring solutions are scalable. And finally, purpose, moving communities from passive awareness to actual physical agency.
But a framework needs a testing ground.
Enter the Sustack. This is a 48 to 72-hour intensive innovation sprint. But instead of tech developers in a room coding software,
These teams are made up of youth, retirees, and informal waste workers.
and their feedstock is 100% local waste.
The constraints placed on these teams are incredibly strict. Whatever they design to solve a local problem must require absolutely no grid power to manufacture.
None at all.
It must be repairable by local citizens using basic tools. And the materials must remain capable of being regenerated again at the end of their life cycle.
To give you a concrete idea of what actually comes out of these sprints, the guidebooks outline a few flagship Genius products. Take the Genius Light.
This is brilliant.
It really is. It's a discarded plastic bottle filled with water and a tiny bit of bleach to prevent algae growth.
Right.
When it's installed into a hole cut in the roof of an informal housing structure, places that have zero connection to an electrical grid, it refracts the outside sunlight. It literally illuminates the room below with the power of a standard 55-watt bulb using absolutely zero electricity.
It is an elegant engineering solution using basic physics.
Then there's the Genius Brick. These are interlocking, weather-resistant structural bricks made from compressed plastic waste using simple manual presses.
Modular shelter made from trash.
And the Genius Bench, which is community furniture built from mixed plastics. These are deliberately placed at schools or bus stops so the community visibly interacts with their transformed waste every single day.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Genius Bench or the Light Pack, they aren't just clever crafts. The true genius of the Sustack is the economic mandate we touched on earlier.
The prosperity metric.
Exactly. Teams don't just build a prototype. To pass the judging criteria, they have to deliver an impact logic document and a fully realized micro-business model.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here, though. Are we really expecting a team of retirees and informal waste workers to calculate profit margins and business logistics in the middle of a 72-hour hackathon?
It sounds like a stretch, but the facilitation is designed specifically to guide them there. The requirement is absolute. They must prove that their product takes these free scraps and creates a finished product with at least a 20% profit margin for the community.
20%.
At least. The driving question of the entire sprint is, could a mother living in a low-income housing flat start a small business with this prototype tomorrow?
Wow.
If the answer is no, the product is considered a failure, no matter how environmentally friendly it is.
That is such a massive departure from how we usually teach sustainability. And the way they train people to think like this is deeply fascinating. Looking at the Facilitator Guidebook, there is a 5-phase learning impact process delivery model.
And what stands out immediately is what they forbid the facilitators from doing.
Yes. There are no PowerPoint presentations. There are no depressing statistics about ocean plastics.
And there is absolutely no guilt tripping about the state of the environment.
Because guilt might generate a donation, but it doesn't build permanent infrastructure. Capability does.
Spot on. In phases 1 and 2, which they call awakening and material intelligence, they don't lecture at all.
They just dump a pile of complex, dirty waste on the table and tell the participants to test it. Cut it, heat it, bend it, compress it, break it.
What's happening psychologically in those first 2 phases is profound. Standard education penalizes making a mess. By encouraging them to break things right out of the gate, the facilitators normalize failure.
Failure stops being a source of shame.
Right. It simply becomes raw mechanical information. It teaches material literacy through tactile feedback rather than theory.
Then the pressure gets dialed up in phases 3 and 4, co-creation and viability. The strict 72-hour timeline forces them to stop overthinking and start building.
This is where that micro-business model comes into play. They have to calculate labor time and fair pricing.
The guidebook explicitly tells facilitators to remind teams that, quote, If it doesn't sustain people, it won't scale.
It completely removes the romance from poverty and sustainability. It forcefully grounds environmentalism in economic dignity.
Finally, they reach phase 5, reflection. The goal here is a deliberate shift in identity. The documentation notes that the ultimate deliverable of a Sustac isn't the plastic brick or the solar bulb.
The deliverable is the change of the human participant.
Yes, they don't leave the event asking, what should we do about the sustainability crisis? They leave saying, I know exactly how to build a solution.
And that identity shift is heavily protected by the judging criteria. The judges are strictly briefed to penalize what the framework calls performative sustainability.
Let's unpack that term, performative sustainability. They use the example of making a decorative flower out of a discarded plastic bottle.
Right. If a team creates a decorative flower, it fails the viability test. It might look nice, but it doesn't solve a structural friction in the community, and it certainly doesn't create a reliable income stream.
The scoring matrix heavily rewards usefulness, durability, and commercial readiness. It forces the participants to think like structural engineers and entrepreneurs, not just weekend volunteers.
Which brings us to a really fascinating pivot in this whole initiative.
Here is where it gets really interesting. How do you protect a system that is essentially designed to be given away? You've got this incredible 5-piece framework, the Sustac methodology, the psychological delivery models, all created by Dr. Mazelan and Dr. Eng.
But they didn't just put this on a blog.
No. The documents contain highly detailed, aggressive strategies for filing with the Intellectual Property Corporation of Malaysia, MyIPO, to lock down the intellectual property.
It seems like a glaring contradiction at first glance.
Yeah.
You have these open source community solutions mixing with strict legal IP protection.
I was entirely confused by this initially. If the goal is grassroots community action, why spend the time and money locking it down in a legal vault?
The answer is corporate leverage. Let's look at the legal framework they are using, which is a two-pronged approach. First, there's trademarking.
Okay.
They register the brand name, Project Genius, and the logo. But look at the specific classes they file under. Class 41 for education and organizing challenges, Class 40 for waste treatment, and Class 35 for business consulting for microenterprises.
The filing documents note this costs roughly 950 Malaysian ringgit per class. So it's accessible, but it legally stakes their claim across education, heavy industry, and business consulting simultaneously.
That trademark protects the identity. It stops an opportunistic company from running a subpar, greenwashed event and calling it a genius Sustac.
Makes sense.
But the real leverage comes from the second prong, copywriting. In Malaysia, copyright exists automatically the moment you create a work. But the founders take the extra step of filing a voluntary notification.
Known as Form CR1.
Right. And this is backed by a statutory declaration signed before a commissioner for oaths. They compile the 5 Ps framework, the Sustac rules, and that highly specific scoring matrix into a single, legally protected brand manual.
Okay, so they have the legal armor. How does that translate to corporate leverage?
When Think Plus Academy and Sustnet, the organizations behind Project Genius, pitched to massive corporate ESG sponsors, they are not walking in asking for a charitable donation.
They are offering a strategic ESG partnership.
Exactly. You simply cannot offer a strategic partnership to a multinational corporation without validated, protected intellectual property. The corporate world operates on data, compliance audits, and risk mitigation. By having the methodology formally copyrighted, Dr. Mazelan and her team prove this is a proprietary, measurable system, not a feel-good weekend craft fair.
The pitch they make to these corporations is outlined in the documents, and it relies on 3 sponsorship tiers: bronze, silver, and gold.
The ultimate hook is the gold tier,
which requires an investment of 50,000 Malaysian ringgit or more. For a corporation, that's a significant but standard investment for ESG compliance. But if a corporation signs on as a gold sponsor, Think Plus completely customizes the Sustac to solve that specific company's industrial waste stream.
That is the masterstroke of the entire initiative. Imagine you are a major beverage company. Every month, you produce metric tons of unrecyclable multi-layer packaging or damaged plastic pallets.
Project Genius takes that specific corporate waste, brings it directly to the local community via the Sustac, and tasks the community with figuring out how to turn it into a microenterprise.
And in return for their 50,000 ringgit, the sponsor gets hard ESG data.
The pitch letters detail a Genius impact dashboard that tracks mass balance. Literally the exact kilograms of waste intercepted and diverted from the landfill, along with the CO2 equivalent saved and the total training hours transferred to the community.
I want to highlight the importance of mass balance data here. For a corporate auditor, mass balance isn't just a nice metric. It's a rigorously traceable chain of custody. It proves exactly where a kilogram of plastic went.
Project Genius provides this plug-and-play data for the corporation's annual sustainability reports. It creates a closed loop. Corporate waste funds, community innovation provides corporate compliance data.
It's a remarkably pragmatic alignment of incentives.
But once you have this highly successful model working locally in Malaysia, how do you take it to the rest of the world without losing the quality or diluting the brand?
Right, the scaling problem.
The founders detail two mechanisms for scaling without extraction. The first is what they call Sustainix in a box.
It sounds like a tabletop game, but it's a vital piece of scaling infrastructure.
It's a 7-module portable kit containing everything a local community leader needs to run their own challenge. It has material intelligence cards that explain the safe temperature ranges to manipulate different plastics,
It includes community context kits to ensure local cultural needs are met.
and the official judging scorecards. It essentially allows anyone, anywhere, to run a high-impact SUSTAC without needing the original founders in the room.
But the real vision for global scale relies on their second mechanism, the Genius Global Registry.
The blueprints describe this as a living commons for regenerative intelligence. Instead of locking away the winning designs like the Genius Light or the structural bricks, they document them in this open source registry.
A community in Kenya can learn from a successful build in Brazil.
Exactly.
This raises an important question, though. I would push back on the open source nature of this. If you put all this valuable, community-generated intellectual property onto a global registry, what actually stops a massive multinational corporation from just sweeping in, downloading the Genius Brick design, tweaking it slightly, patenting it, and mass-producing it, cutting the community out entirely?
That is the exact trap of greenwashing and IP extraction. But the registry blueprints address this head-on with very strict thresholds for entry. Not just any idea gets uploaded.
First, it has to be physically built. No hypothetical computer-generated 3D models are allowed.
Second, it must be community validated. Local users have to have interacted with it and provided real-world feedback.
Third, it has to be materially honest, using actual discarded waste, not just purchasing new eco-friendly materials to build a prototype.
And critically, to prevent that corporate theft you mentioned, the registry is governed under a Regenerative Commons license.
What does that actually look like in practice?
It means the designs are entirely open for community learning, adaptation, and local microbusiness use. But if a large commercial entity wants to utilize the design at an industrial scale, the license mandates that the credit and a portion of the economic value must travel with the original community that engineered it.
The registry is designed to scale human capability globally, without allowing proprietary lock-in from outside forces. It's a legal safeguard ensuring the wealth generated from the waste stays in the hands of the people who solve the problem.
So what does this all mean for us? When we synthesize all these materials, from the MyIPO legal filings to the deeply psychological 5-phase learning models and the corporate ESG data pipelines, Project Genius fundamentally proves that sustainability does not have to be a narrative of sacrifice.
It isn't just about doing less harm.
Right. It can be an active, creative process of generating new value. By combining rigorous, protected management frameworks with deeply human-centered, low-tech engineering, they are turning literal waste into wealth. They are turning passive environmental awareness into genuine physical agency.
It reminds us that we often look at our resource problems from the wrong angle. We assume lack of resources is the barrier to innovation.
And that connects directly to you listening right now. We often think we need endless materials, high-tech tools, and massive budgets to solve the frictions in our lives or businesses. But Project Genius shows us that extreme constraint is actually the greatest fuel for creativity.
When you strip away the electricity and the easy answers, human ingenuity is forced to take over.
I love that.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, something that takes this framework and applies it to your own world. Look around your own home or workspace today. What is one piece of unrecyclable waste that you throw away regularly?
A great question.
Now imagine you are stripped of grid electricity and high-tech tools. If you were forced to view that specific piece of trash not as a burden but as raw intelligence, what hidden physical property does it have that could be re-engineered to solve the daily friction in your own life?
That is a brilliant challenge. It's a completely different way to view the things we leave behind. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the genius of regenerative innovation. We hope this conversation has sparked a few light bulbs for you. Keep questioning the world around you, keep looking for the hidden value in the scraps, and we will catch you next time.